Welcome to our third actual play season of Woke Mental Wellness. I am your evergreen storyteller, GM, DM, whatever you want to call me. I'm running this shindig, Cassie, and I have a brand new cast of 3 new amazing Black queer folks, and we're going to be returning to the game 12 Inner Demons to explore themes around hope, revolution, change, despair, and what we do when we are living in a world that doesn't care as much as we would hope it cares, and how that impacts us. So, this is our shiny behind the scenes session 0 recording. We did the super secret session 0 before, and this is the one that you all get to hear to get a little download on what you can expect a little bit from this season. So if I can go ahead and have my absolutely fabulous cast that I'm super hyped to play with introduce yourselves, I'm gonna go ahead and let's start with our target. Sin, would you like to just say a bit about yourself and what you know of the character you're building so far?
Hi, it's me. I am going to be playing the part of Romero Marcus, who is an activist that has works with one grassroots organization that has tried to organize with others in the city for different things. But his focus is community outreach. So trying to make sure that people have their material needs met, like being fed and having clothes and having access to things like books and job applications. He is 27. It's one of those things that I feel if you're not an activist at an early age, and I feel like Romero would have probably gotten into his activism right at the end of his high school years, right? Just long enough to be right outside of the honeymoon phase where the disillusionment starts to hit the hardest when you're working at things. And there's also been a recent change in leadership for the organization that he works for, and they are a little bit more resistant to the questions that he asks or the insight that he wants to offer and all of that. So here he is a year and a half after that change and some other things, and being like, right, you know what? We're gonna work on some social media posts, and I'm going to do the quiet good that I can over here, because if I have to ask for approval or assistance or support in doing this, it's not gonna get done. That's where he is at the moment.
All right. Blue, do you wanna go ahead and introduce yourself and who the character that you are starting to build?
Hell yeah. I'm Blue. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm building a little vampire demon. Right now, I'm kind of sitting on the name Ruin. I liked it. It's just kind of simple. I like the ring it has to it. I have been playing with Ruin, thinking that they're attached to a human named Alexis Smith, and the two started off kind of rocky at first and very much at odds. But I think Alexis kind of hit a point in their life where she was like, look, clearly you're not going anywhere and I need to continue living my life. So let's just cut to the bullshit and work something out so that way you can stop making my life hell. And I think that really interested Ruin because they had never encountered a human like that before. And so they're chill now, they're cool. And that's how I've been thinking about that. I think Ruin now has become because vampire demons can, kind of shape how they look to someone's desire or what have you. So I think they use that to gain fame as a content creator, and they feed from the chronic online obsession of their fans. And that is their favorite drink. And yeah, that's what I have about Ruin so far.
Okay, interesting. Emrys, do you want to introduce yourself and the character you are starting to build?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Emrys. My pronouns are they, them. And I am building the human, or one of the humans in our party, Miss Genissa Wallace. Genissa is 28 years old. She is in a similar place to where Romero is, had a couple of years in frontline organizing work, definitely not a lifetime organizer. She came to kind of political consciousness later on, 3 years ago. Had a great, what she thought was a great group of friends who kind of were all on the same wavelength around what they had to do. She was, and still is technically a street medic, though she doesn't really see the streets too much anymore. Now, after everything that went down a couple years ago, she is doing the quiet work of junior high guidance counselor, focusing on just kind of helping keep the youth occupied, keep them out of harm's way, intercede for them wherever she can, look out for them, and just make sure that they can make it. That's where her heart is, and everything else is kind of, let's just say she's disillusioned with everything else.
Yeah. And so this season, the archdemon, so for those who've been with us, or maybe you're catching up on Woke Mental Wellness podcast and you've listened to Windy City Demons. That was the first actual play season that we did. And so maybe you know a little bit about 12 Inner Demons, but we're coming back to 12 Inner Demons, and the archdemon this season is Papa Bawa, which is a newer demon in the scheme of historics and stuff, but it is a demon specifically. It is the myth has traveled across many places, but started in the area of Tanzania and on the African continent, and has moved throughout Caribbean and various other places. And Papa Bawa is many things. There's many different versions, as is common. The Papa Bawa that I have augmented for this game is essentially a demon of colonization. It comes and makes people suspicious of each other, attacking each other, and basically starts the decline into a colonial fascist hellscape, which is, I've been toying with this idea for a year and a half now, and I don't like how accurate it is to where we're at now. I don't fully know when this is going to come out, but I'm going to tell y'all we are recording this the day before the inauguration. So, yeah, I think we're all dealing with a little bit of Papa Bawa.
An understatement.
So, we are back in the city of Chicago. This is a semi-realistic version of Chicago again. Things may be a bit condensed because, for those who don't know, Chicago land-wise is actually pretty big. It's a big, small city in a lot of ways. And so for those who are like myself, Chicagoans, don't at me, bro. If I say something is closer together than it is, please chill out. Please chill out. We've only got a couple of sessions to tell this story. So chill, fam. Chill. It'll be okay, I promise. If I say that First Aid Comics is closer, or if I move stores down to the south side, chill. But we'll be playing in the summertime. They'll be protesting and things. So I know we started talking about your characters. You have the beginnings, but how are y'all feeling about whether or not, or the extent to which your characters know each other and interact?
I've been thinking on that, and I think I would know y'all characters via Alexis, because sometimes they'd like to just be like a little wisp of smoke, kind of just following Alexis around, and other times they'll take on the form of a humanoid, a human. And I think Alexis is, I like the idea of Alexis like being involved in the organization that Romero is involved in, and just kind of being like one of the ones who's always volunteering. They help like with the clothing drives or like passing out information, things like that.
Yeah, I think like on a similar wavelength that Nis is probably also peripherally involved and volunteers sometimes for the organization that Romero works with. More like doing kind of like simple first aid, wound care, so kind of going out on the streets, any unhoused folks who, you know, need some basic first aid, need some wound care, need help, you know, kind of dressing or cleaning any injuries that they've sustained, however they sustained them, just kind of, you know, walking around and just supporting folks directly kind of at that level whenever she is not occupied with kind of doing the after school programs, I mean, and the summer camp programming for the youth.
Oh, I love that.
And Blue, did you decide, am I playing Alexis? Or are you double fisting?
I could.
The temptation.
I could.
You want to dual wield?
You know what? Why not? You only live once, you know?
Okay.
And I do already have half the character sheet filled out. So fuck it.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about Alexis then.
Let me see, because I wrote a little bit about Alexis. What did I write? I think when I was looking at the traumas, I think I chose the aggression trigger trauma for her. And I liked the idea of her like being in the field of sex work where she does like femdom stuff. Maybe she works like at a local like kink club, and she, you know, will like rent a room or what have you and can take on clients. And I think she really enjoys that because she can create an environment like in partnership with someone that is like a controlled environment and not like being out in the wild in everyday life where unexpected shit is happening and things outside of your control is happening. Because I think she deals with a lot of that, like things constantly happening to her outside of her control. She got like bullshit going on with her landlord. Her like 9 to 5 is at like a shitty call center. So it's terrible work environments and they don't give a fuck about you. And, you know, I think she deals like a lot with that, and that translates into her like being kind of like aggressive, like standoffish, kind of like resting bitch face in a way. But she's like a nice person though. She's just kind of quick to anger, I think, or quick to like take action, maybe. I don't know. Okay.
Connections wise, who do y'all feel like knows who the most, and who are you just like peripheral with, if anyone?
How old is Alexis?
I think Alexis would probably be like 26. Yeah, 26 feels good. 26, 25. Brain probably just got fully developed.
Okay.
Does Nessa, like with the programs that she runs for the youth, are they usually like centered on something? Like, are they like art centered at all?
Yeah, it's kind of varied, just different types of projects. So there's art, you know, different mediums of art, whether that's like painting, textiles, dance, music. Basically, what she does is she tries to pull kind of people from the community who have different skills to come and do programming workshops for the youth as much as possible. And also popping up, hosting them in different community spaces, like throughout the city. So there's that aspect as well of like actually just being out there. So I think definitely.
I love that. I think one of the things that Alexis might enjoy is painting. And so I like the idea of them like helping volunteering with like some of the youth programs. They can like, you know, they'll find like supplies. Usually it'll go to like you know, like how when stores will throw out items that have been like damaged even a little bit, even though they're like totally fine. They'll like go to arts, like local art stores, and make like, let me buy that off y'all. You know what I mean? For like a really low price, and they're able to like give it to the youth and supply them with those things. And just gonna hang with the kids, you know, be an assistant, like art teacher if that's ever needed. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think Genissa would be all over that, and as many hands as, you know, kind of possible. So I think aware of and working in tandem with at times, probably both Alexis and Romero, but not, I wouldn't say necessarily maybe like friends with,
Right.
because she's pretty keeps to herself most of the time. How long has the organization that Romero works with, how long has he been working with them specifically?
Romero has been working with that organization for the last 5 years, I would say. And I think this is something where I feel like between Alexis and Genissa, am I pronouncing that correctly, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. I think between Alexis and Genissa, Romero would be more familiar or connected to Genissa because, for fun, we have a trauma in common. Like the traumatic trait, we have a traumatic trait in common. But I think that would be in the way of that at a certain point, like right around the time or shortly after the change of leadership and things, there would be, depending on how long you've also been kind of doing the volunteer medic assistance, you would have a kind of an arc for, I remember when Romero was more like out there and energetic and outgoing, and not that they're the entire opposite now, but he's significantly less so. And there's a feeling to that arc that is kind of familiar. I don't know if Romero and Genissa would have had that whole talk yet about what happened and why, but I think there is you haven't said anything, but I see you, that is kind of common to us in general, being like, oh girl, okay.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah. It's like, you know, when you're out and you're used to seeing the same people out, and maybe you're not like friends or anything, but like you're used to seeing them as like a staple of, you know, the work, and then you stop seeing them. And then suddenly you see them, you know, somewhere else, and they just have kind of like there's just a demeanor of like, it's just different vibe, and you're like, oh, you know, like something transpired, kind of deal. Yeah.
Like that kind of vibe, or you talk to somebody, it's kind of like, yeah, I kind of stepped out of the like leadership role for a minute. You're just like, that was your whole bag. Like, what do you mean? Like that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. This is going to be fun. I think for Alexis, I wouldn't say that they don't know each other. I think they know each other well enough to be like, see each other and kind of be like, oh, there's Alexis. Oh, okay, there's Romero or what have you. But I don't think they're as close to each other as Genissa and Romero are. Not too far behind though, just because as far as like the volunteer stuff goes, I would imagine Alexis is kind of a fixture, just is very reliable and is always there to do the things. So, just kind of like either the, hey, this person's always here and very reliable, or depending on personality, like she's here, she keeps everybody's spirits up. It's great.
I definitely think she gives the former, like, you can call Alexis She is not upset. She's kind of standoffish, but don't let that get to you. She's gonna come and get like the job done. And I think that is like the vibe she gets off. Very much reliable, and can be depended upon, but isn't like too social, I imagine.
Yeah, I think Genissa is on a similar kind of wavelength. Like, very much anything that she says she's gonna do, anything that she puts out there, she is getting it done. She's showing up. She's
Right.
doing the work, even if she's the only one there. And in the beginning, in the early stages, after kind of like the rift happened, she really was the only one there because everyone else was too busy with their new positions and titles to do with her the things that need to get done. I think that if something is kind of on the wavelength that she's on, like, she's happy to put her hands to it, but for the most part, she kind of focuses on the things that she knows that she can control and kind of execute without having to rely over much on anyone else.
So I'm kind of hearing that as a whole, the group has this kind of like, to varying degrees, jaded, like, alone together situation.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I feel like even the three of them recognize that like isolation isn't great, but I'm also like not really trying to be bothered with nobody. But on the other hand of that, like, I do deeply value community and like putting in the work, which is it's kind of a hard place to be at. You know what I mean? Like, you want to put in that effort and assist, but you're also like, 10 feet though.
I think the place that Romero is in isn't necessarily jaded, but definitely in roots. I think where I would say he is now is, I care so much, but I don't know what to do with all of this. So I am doing my best to just hold on to the bits that haven't been like messed up or ruined or heavily redacted or what have you.
I think Genissa is definitely in that alone together place. I think she is still very much like wounded by the rift that occurs, and she's still harboring a lot of bitterness about it because it's still very fresh. At the same time, I think that she also does value community, which is why she is so wounded. I think there's definitely a mistrust of letting this work to be done like blur the lines between the work to be done and this idea of like family or camaraderie or the more personal emotional side, right? I think she can look at folks like Romero and Alexis and see people who are similarly doing the work from their perspective, but that kinship that she would have been inclined to feel or try to foster or cultivate years ago, like, that pull is not there anymore because it's just, she's still kind of reeling from having the rug pulled out from under her, like, emotionally.
That makes complete sense.
I think these are all very, very real positions to be coming at, and I think they're really relatable, especially for where a lot of folks are, especially in the varying, like, some folks are just coming to this stuff, but a lot of folks, especially Black radical folks, have been like, I mean, their grand been doing this stuff, right? Like, there's not a whole lot new, but it doesn't make it feel less difficult, right? So yeah, I think it's also important to note that, like, with the places you're at on this kind of continuum of hope and despair, that part of the central, like, struggles and temptations that you'll be faced with, both together and individually, is the temptation to disconnect, to individualize more, to like, well, that's not your problem. They'll just let you down anyway. It's why bother fighting it, right? Is going to be kind of the devil on your shoulder all season, are going to be variations of that. So yeah, and you'll see, you'll also see that there are there's going to be it's going to be interesting for Ruin, because there's going to be vampire demons that are very much not on your side.
That's real. I expect that. Yeah, and especially because like I feel like a lot of, or maybe not a lot, but like other demons are like moving in malice, and Ruin is very much like, look, this is my human, don't fuck with them. I don't give a fuck about the rest of these humans that you do whatever with, but like, don't fuck with my human, like the humans that they care about though. So I think if they are trying to like harm their little, I don't know, little group that they have going on, then I think it present like a lot of problems. Or if it like compromise even Alexis, like in a way, they have some problems, because I think they have maybe even unknowingly like to Ruin, like see Alexis as like an actual friend. But yeah, but that'll be very interesting though.
Mm-hmm.
Working on a demon was hard for me because like it's so abstract, and you kind of have like a lot of freedom with what you can do with them with this system, which I really like. I fuck with that so heavy. But putting it into something tangible for me has been kind of difficult, I guess.
What is there any part in particular that's felt more difficult than others? Because you've got a pretty baller concept. Like it spawned a second character.
It did. And I think the part that I was having trouble with more than anything was like, so lesser demons are supposed to have basically like been birthed, so to speak, from like an emotion or like a trauma. And I was like, okay, what emotion would Ruin like represent and embody? And I still haven't quite figured that out yet. And it's hard because like I don't want Ruin to be a bad guy TM, but I also feel like maybe they believe themselves to be selfish, but like their actions show that they care about various beings,
Can I propose something to you?
Yes, please.
Based on latching on to a sex worker and like the obsession thing and everything, it sounds like Ruin was birthed out of longing.
Ooh. I like that. Oh, I like that a lot.
Sin, how has it been creating Marcus? Or last name is Marcus, sorry. I'm looking at my notes in the wrong part. How has it been creating Romero?
So, fun fact, just before our super secret session 0, I had a talk with a person who is literally in a situation that is very parallel to this. And I went, but what if tabletop character? And then I got the primer for this and I'm just like, oh, I know exactly what I'm writing.
Okay.
Funny enough, one of those two names that my character has is the name of said person. But that was more coincidental than anything. But the process of it was kind of like, I hate how easy it was to just be like, oh, here it is. Like, it's just so familiar a feeling because you see and experience it so many times. It's just kind of like, oh, you mean exhaustion with trying your best to do good in a world that is determined to squash every effort you make to do that? Wow.
Nope.
I can't relate to that at all.
Couldn't imagine.
Sarcasm.
60 accidental pages later out of the journal.
Emrys is just shaking their head.
Like,
and I go ahead, sorry, Sam.
No, I was gonna say, like, it's one of those things of being like, you go into the book and like for for some people playing this game, I would imagine, you go in here and you're just like, what would be the more interesting story to tell? What would be the most dramatic thing? Me, I'm like, what would be the most realistic, true to life set of stats and traumas to pick for this person?
That's scarier
Seriously.
than anything.
Right?
Like the best horror is a horror that like you can witness in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's too real.
Mm-hmm. Seriously. I think that's the thing that is makes me nervous about this campaign, this system, because I'm like really new. I'm into like tabletop gaming. I only started playing TTRPGs like at the very, very early like beginning of the pandemic, and I haven't played very many systems since then, mostly, you know, like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and stuff like that. So this is the first game that I am playing with a character that has no powers at all, that has kind of no supernatural abilities. And I think the thing that makes me most nervous is like, this is just the realness of it, you know, the emotional realness of it. And I'm a big old crybaby. I don't think I've played a campaign of any TTRPG where I have not cried at some point. And so I'm just like, you know, the emotional resonance of this setting and the storyline and everything is just, yeah, it's so real, you know, it's so real. It's like, you know, people are like, let's play TTRPGs to escape from reality. And it's like, but what if the opposite, you know? What if you're just going even deeper into reality? What happens then?
One of the things that I think about, just as you say that, is how often I think about that same kind of thing where, you know, like, we play games to have fun and we play games to escape. But the thing that I've noticed among my melanated kin is that they're just like, you mean I can imagine a world where the things that I do and the actions that I take have like weight and impact, and people actually have to listen? I can make people listen. I can shape the world in a way that leaves it better than I found it. I can do something with this ancestral rage I feel about why conditions are the way that they are. Let me go do that. And that is a thing that a lot of people don't want to engage, because it means having to have your brain on. And I think for most of us here, it is I get to have my brain on that the things that I want to do actually work. This is great, or at least cathartic.
Well, and that's the thing, is this whole idea for this season came up because I've done a lot of activism. I've done a lot of work on these things. I teach folks about, you know, the movement cycle and the like ebb and flow and the hope and despair that come with it, and how challenging all of these things are, especially as folks don't quote unquote get it, and it feels bad, and everything feels like a slight, and it feels like you can't trust anybody, and in a lot of ways there's a lot of people you can't trust, and how challenging it is when you hold the ideal that everyone is worthy, and that they're like, we don't leave people behind, with the fact that you also can't take everyone with you at the same pace. And what it looks like to have to figure that out in real life, in real time, outside of just theory, but in praxis. What does it look like when someone is digging their heels in and, you know, doesn't want to acknowledge the humanity of others IRL, and you're trying to, you know, really make something happen? So, you know, that's where this all came from, is I'm like, damn, folks feel really hopeless and like are getting burnt out on this work, but we need this work. But also, you know, people, like, we all move at different speeds, and yeah, liberation is collective, which means at some point, if we want this dream and we want to keep dreaming, we can't just shunt everyone off the train with no hope of getting back on. They may not be able to ride in your train car, but you got to pick them back up when they're ready to hop on.
And then there's also the part of like, because, you know, in my brain, as you said that, what came up was like, you know, from Genissa's perspective, it's like, do we though? Right? And I feel like that's kind of where she's at, because it's like, at least within her arc, it's like depending on like what transpired, right? When those people or that person, right, kind of got put off the train for whatever happened, whatever they did. It's like, how do you heal the damage, the trauma that was done in a way that would allow that reconciliation, right? And at what distance or closeness, how do you decide where to hold that person after the fact, right? Like, and also, what do you do with the people who either don't believe that like amends are needed, either, you know, for their own actions or for the actions of others that have harmed you? Like, how do you remain invested when, you know, the harm that was done to you is minimized, not only by the persons who did it, but by everyone else too? And this kind of idea of like togetherness and solidarity is used to kind of gloss over really important reconciliation work that needs to happen.
I think the healing aspect is rough because even now with the things that are happening, you've got Black folks being like, but do they go that hard for us? And it's like, it doesn't matter. It does not fucking matter. I literally just got this comment on a post I made. Literally, another a Black woman nonetheless, unfortunately, is like, do they go that hard for us? And it's like, a Black refugee doesn't do what you want, and so you're going to rat them out? So what happens when it's your turn? We can educate people at any point in time. When they're here, when people are gone, dead, like, disappeared people can't be educated. Folks in community who see people that they thought the worst of, defending them and preventing horrible things from happening to them, that's a hell of an education. And even if it weren't, again, it don't matter, because if you're not willing to resist fascism at every point, when you let it in, it festers and grows really fast. And I think that's also like, there's regardless of whether or not, because this is still a game, there's still the possibility y'all roll real bad, but like, regardless of how this game ends up playing out and what happens, I think the thing that's most important to me to get across is that, like, resistance is worth it. Always.
100%.
That, yeah, it's risky. You know, you may need to, you know, really be up on your legal information, but laws are not justice. Laws are not ethics. And at some point, we have to be willing to put skin in the game if we're going to get through these things. And that is true whether you're in the United States, whether you are in Haiti, whether you are in Congo, Palestine, whether you are in China, whether you are anywhere in the world, because it's happening all over the place. And I think that's the thing of, like, you don't have to absolutely love each other. You don't have to be buddy-buddy to fight together.
That, I think, has been one of the harder lessons to learn is that when it comes to any kind of like effort to make sure that like everyone's free and safe and cared for, there are a lot of people I'm going to have to walk with that I might not particularly like. And that one is kind of difficult.
It's a hard fucking pill to swallow, and it's something I kind of struggle with, because I definitely want all my niggas to be free. Mm-hmm. But there are some niggas who have committed like harm, you know what I mean? And yeah,
you're just like, I need that addressed, but like I need this not to be here so that we can make sure that gets addressed.
Right.
We're gonna circle back to this, but first, fascists.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and I think we can do multiple things at once, right? Like, just as healing is not linear, right? It's not one step after another. It's a pond. It's a pond with a river flowing into it and out of it, right? Like, there's a lot happening at once, and I think we can build my hope is that we can build accountability while we fight back the mess and the fascism, right? Of like, that's part of fighting. That's part of the fight, right? Is like, it's really hard to do fashy shit if there is proper accountability and community.
That is the part that I have a hard time talking about with other people. I feel like everybody here is probably on the same page, but outside of that.
So I really love, like I tell people all the time, like Parable of the Solar has gotten me through the last several years of the hot ass mess of a hellscape that we've all been living through. And I think one thing that Butler does really well in that book is like balance that nuance, where like when the people who you were either like at odds with or not cool with, or who had done harm, or who were living, on a totally different wavelength or a totally different set of beliefs, are the only people that are left after shit goes way left. And that you need each other to survive whatever is happening next. You gotta figure it the fuck out. You gotta figure out how to have a conversation about the things that came before, and how to make decisions about like whether or not y'all can work together going forward from this point. And I think balancing, like, some of the time the answer is going to be yes, right? And there are going to be people who, like, you realize the shit that you were arguing about was just so petty in the grand scheme. And then there are going to be people who kind of double down and, dig their heels in, and they're like, no. And you're not going to be able to have any kind of reconciliation or any kind of agreement with them. And I think that has gone a long way to helping me be able to figure that out and just say, like, okay, like, we gotta walk together, but like, I'm cool. We don't gotta walk right next to each other. You can walk over there and I'll walk over here, and we're cool.
That part.
Right? And then there are other people who are just like, oh, you don't want to walk with me at all? All right, that's cool. If you do decide later on that you want to walk with me, like, here's the rules. Here's the agreements that all of us walking together have made. Mm-hmm. Can you ride with that? Yes or no? Like, I'm not going to tell you can't change your mind. I'm just saying, like, the rules are not going to...
You have to come into it, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be over here trying to sabotage whatever walk you're doing, as long as it's not, again, on some fashy type time. But I think there's a lot of righteous anger, indignation that can make it hard to do that sometimes. Can make it hard to be like, you know what? You do your thing over there. I do my thing over here. And as long as they don't conflict and we're generally moving in the same direction, like, we just let it rock.
Yeah. I think what's hard to do is, because especially in the US, we're so hyper individualized, and we have and so many concepts like karma have been misappropriated, and and misunderstood. I think one of the hardest things is when folks, because again, I made a post because of the stuff that's going on, and somebody has reposted, reskeeted with noting that they're only going to protect Latino folks that reside in blue states, because anyone in a red state, they're holding culpable for Trump winning. And can I just say, one, refugees and migrants and people who are coming here for any reason and may not have access to the documentation that the government withholds from them, are of all racializations, ethnicities, and nationalities. And in fact, many of them are Black. So Black folks, cut this shit out. Stop. Like, I think my biggest frustration is, yeah, it's fun and it's cute to talk about fuck around and find out, or, you know, oh, that like the Schadenfreude pie. Like, I get it. It's an in the moment, like, cute little thing sometimes, but on a nationwide scale, when you're talking about the government rounding up people to harm, it's not cute, it's not karma, it's not funny. And also it shows, like, those kinds of things, it's pissed. I used to be one of those people. I'm not gonna lie, right? I'm not coming at this from the soapbox. I'm coming at this from, I used to be that person. And sometimes I still have those feelings, because it's real and it's really frustrating to constantly watch people sell themselves and the rest of us down the river for nothing, for absolutely nothing, for something that will never happen. But my God, if we cannot be a collective and stand together, like, you can't educate people that way.
I found, like, for also, like, just like an added thing, because I'm also in this place, and you and I have talked about that, of being like, now look at you, you know, as the African proverb goes, now look at you, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm not trying to, I am personally, like, if I had the tea right now, right, I am a fan of just kind of like, now look at those consequences. Aren't they gorgeous? Like, festive, ready for the season and everything else. But the other thing that I end up having to talk to people about whenever this comes up is, do I kind of like the Schadenfreude of it all? Yes, but only for the people that it applies to. And that's not everyone. Like, there are people who literally were not able to vote because they couldn't. There is a whole group of people who are considered part of the US but aren't able to vote in US elections. Like, this stuff has nuance. I need y'all to, like, not aim like the proverbial cannon, howitzers, or whatever other weaponry imagery you want to use at people who you have no way of knowing whether they deserved it or not. And in a lot of cases, there were a lot of people in these red states that tried their very best to show up and do what they needed to do, and they were not listened to. And that happens a lot. That is probably, if you were listening to this, happening where you live right this second. I need
it
y'all. It
literally happened here.
I need y'all to breathe, please.
It fucking sucks, and it's just, y'all need to be fucking for real. It's ridiculous to hold an entire group of people responsible for, let's be real, the statistics do not say that Black and brown folks voted for Trump. So let's start there. You know, if you really want to be upset and try to hold individuals accountable, look to your white counterparts and ask them what are they doing to further assist their communities and, like, disenfranchise folks.
I think it's a challenge. I think just bringing it back to this idea of, like, where's the balance between, like, accountability and the emotional rush that being petty can bring.
Especially when you feel
Say that again.
when you feel vindicated about it.
Exactly. And as someone, right, like I'm an August Leo, so I know all about petty and holding grudges, right? And I strongly believe in holding grudges. I strongly believe in not forgiving people who aren't sorry. And so, like, I get that. The flip side, and this is something that I've had to work at, right, is finding the balance between, like, again, holding folks accountable, right, not giving absolution to people who haven't changed or are not invested in changing, and also being able to, like, process hurt and soften enough to accept when someone has changed, right? When someone is trying to make amends for harm that they did, when someone has grown past the previous ignorance, and be able to create room for reconciliation to happen. And it's hard. It's especially hard, I think. And that's where kind of Genissa is living right now, in that place before you learn that lesson, right? In that place where it's like, these people really hurt me. Right? I was so wounded by my love for these people, both physically and, mentally, emotionally. And that bitterness is, right, like, it's there very much in her reality. And being able to, see, is she going to be able to grow past that? Is she going to be able to work that out? Is she going to be able to, keep the accountability and the importance that holding people accountable demands, while letting go of the bitterness, right? Because I think
giving them a little grace, because we are all, like, humans experiencing life for the first time. But like, I'm hurt though, Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part.
It is. It's definitely fucking hard. In Genissa's, like, realm right now, are the individuals that, like, she fell out with, are they in that realm of trying to reconcile with Nessa?
Oh no, they're living their best nonprofit industrial complex, director of DEI lives right now.
I would be fucking pissed. I get it. I get it.
We have some critiques here, y'all. We are not subtle about our critiques of these systems.
And I think that's the part, is like holding the accountability without right? Because the bitterness is the thing that can turn someone away from the work, right? The bitterness, the disillusionment, the man fuck this type of energy that can come from being hurt, right? Where you're just like, well, I'm not going to help at all. Kind of like that, that vibe we were talking about, like, oh, well, if this is how if this is how it's going to be and what I have to put up with, like, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to do any of this. I don't want to be a part of organizing. I don't want to be a part of movement work, right? Like, and I think sometimes it can be hard to find the balance between, like, this is work that's still worth doing and I still want to do it and I'm gonna remain engaged with it, and fuck these people in particular, right? And being able to process the hurt of this individual interpersonal harm that was done in a way that doesn't make you throw the gate down and lock up.
Throw the whole thing away.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a very real thing that happens as people experience these interpersonal hurts within the organizing that just cause them to completely turn away from all of that work altogether and just very much retreat into their, like, I'm just going to get up every day. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to take care of mine, and whatever happens, happens kind of approach. And that's what the trauma can do.
And I feel like where Genissa is at the how do I learn, if it's possible, to let go of the bitter part of things while still being like, no, there's still boundaries here, there's still accountability here, but, like, if we're gonna get free, I'm gonna have to work this out somehow anyway. By contrast, I think Romero is like a step before where Genissa is now, where it's kind of they're slowly receding, but it hasn't, like, the whole overwhelm of things that just kind of crystallizes into this, like, intense bitterness hasn't happened quite yet. That's still in progress. And so like, at some point there's going to be a time where, like, Romero's been, like, just kind of focused on doing the good that he can and hasn't sat down to think about what it has caused so far or how he feels about all of the things that have happened in like more than a surface level way. So at some point, you know, like having to confront that is going to be a very interesting time. And I think that is going to be in those ranks that I took, and like a handful of things. One of them being like, one of the traumas that I took was basically focused on speaking in a direct way about his feelings, about the things.
Like being able to, or the inability to?
Well, like the trauma is that he doesn't. Right.
Oh,
He
okay.
just like at certain points, there's just like, and just does not say things. So the challenge
Shutting
there
down.
is learning how to just talk through them and being like, let me
conversations.
let me be clear about this. And
Yep. And just to catch folks up as we're talking about these things, right? So in 12 Inner Demons, players can play either a human or a lesser demon. And humans take traumas, traits, faults, and competencies as part of their character build. So when you hear folks talking about, I took a trauma or I took a fault or whatever, they're talking about their character build, because one of the reasons we're using this system is because it directly addresses trauma. And really, that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about a lot of trauma on a transgenerational scale that has resulted in the creations of entire genocidal nation states built because people didn't process their trauma. You know, just throwing out numbers for no reason, anywhere between 75, 76 years ago, 400-500 plus years ago, just like no specific reasons for those numbers, but
not at all.
It's what kinds of systems do we create when we don't process our trauma well, right? And I'm really big on kind of understanding that aspect, because if you really look, you can see the vestiges of previous traumas in the systems that exist now, and where the initial positive intention went so completely askew because of that unprocessed trauma. And I like using fiction as a medium to understand those concepts, because I think, we live in such a politically charged society, and that's not in the sense of lowercase p, politics isn't everything, but in the sense that if you categorize something as a political conversation or theory or ideology, people immediately have resistance to internalizing whatever comes next. But if you can put it in a format that kind of defangs that, it's easier for people to understand, or even just engage with, even if they don't end up accepting it or believing it, right? They're at least willing to engage with the premise. And so I like to use, fiction as a way to explore those things, and also to help myself understand some of those things as well. And there's a really great book. I don't know if it's a trilogy. I hope there's a third book coming, but so far it's 2 books by a wonderful Black author, Akwaeke Emezi. And it's supposed to be young adult fiction. I think it's really intense young adult fiction, but I loved it. There's 2 books. They're called Pet and Bitter.
Yes! Those books are
they're so good, and I think they do such a good job of highlighting what does a community turn into when they try to respond to violence within their kind of system, but the response that they enact, they haven't processed the trauma from what that violence was, and so the system that they enact perpetuates that violence in ways that, because of the unhealed trauma, people are not willing to accept is happening, because they're so invested in continuing to believe that they've already solved that problem. They don't need to rehash it. And they're really great books. Emrys a really great author. Definitely check those out. I'm not affiliated anyway by any means. I just love the books. I think they're really
it's on
great.
the reading list. I gotta check that out.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And so Pet and Better are those two. I am also like, if you haven't read Freshwater, that one is specifically dealing with a lot more mental health stuff, but is so good. It's on my shelf. I have the physical copy of Freshwater.
Akweke
Same
Emezi.
author?
Yeah.
Same author. It's Akwaeke. Emezi is Emezi. And so I think, at least for Genissa, where she's kind of sprung into existence is in that place of like the active processing part. Like, she's trying really hard not to fall into that emotional hole of just saying, like, fuck it entirely. And so she's kind of redirected her energy towards these children more fully, right? And maybe away from some of the, like, direct frontline out in the streets protests movements, but still focusing on, right, kind of the building, right, that there is still this hope that like things can be better, and she's focusing her attention on these children and nurturing them so that they can experience better. Because when she tries to think about kind of being in community with other adults, that just does not feel like a safe thing to do.
That makes perfect sense. As we've been talking, it's helped me flesh out Alexis a lot, and I'm gonna rework like the trauma that they have. In regular human, like non-target humans, don't have to have more than one trauma, right? We just need the one.
Yeah, for non-target humans, you only need one.
Okay.
One rank. I love when people. Okay, I'm so sorry. Let's be petty for a second. Let's be petty while we're doing while we're finishing up creation, because some of this shit's gonna make it into NPCs, because I'm petty as shit. And whenever you say that you are only going to protect people in a state that has been labeled as blue, because those are who you're considering the good ones. And I'm like, hey, no, that's fashy as fuck. And then you're like, you clearly didn't read what I said. I stand 10 toes down on everything I said in my post. I know you stand 10 toes down on it. It's fashy as shit. You're standing on, like, I think one of the things that is going to be the hardest learned, and it's sad we haven't learned this, I think one of the things that's going to be the hardest to learn is the collectivism of combating government. And like, a lot of people have been able to be asleep for their entire lives, and they think that they can use these designations, white state, blue state, without a systemic critique of how those things came to be and what it actually means. And they think they're still, they think that they are not helping the state, and they are. And I think that's going to be the hardest learned, because it's not going to be until they're the ones being looked at because they're a certain color and they're being dragged off screaming, but I'm not one of them, till they realize that it doesn't matter whether you are or you aren't.
It is wild the rate at which people will just do the work of supremacy without any help or assistance, like willingly, yeah. Right? Like in their Sunday best, no less. I just like help. Like, why would you do that? It's like one of those these people have spent years. A person literally made an entire campaign platform on, look at those people who are not like you. Like, you see those people, they're bad. Most of them. I guess there are a good couple few of them, but they're bad. Like, this person went on this whole thing and you looked at, wow, you're looking at these people because of their, because of whether or not they're able-bodied or what their genders are or whether they're otherwise marginalized, and went, this is bad. We can't rock with that. That's not good. And then you went, but you live in Kansas. So, and it's kind of like, girl, what are we? No.
What you were saying is such a mood, because it's just making me think, or at least especially relating this to Genissa, how willing people are to engage with these structures that they could previously clearly identify as problematic, as long as the right people are in them. It's like, you knew what the nonprofit industrial complex was and why it's the feds and why it's not going to work for our liberation. But suddenly, because the people in charge of the nonprofit either look like you or say that they're down with what you believe, you're more than willing to kind of like trade in whatever you were holding on to before for a position on whatever task force or, whatever the case may be, and be like, oh, suddenly it's, oh, well, we need a seat at the table. If we're going to change anything, we have to get in the door and blah, 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 blah. And all of those same critiques that you previously at least professed to understand were bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where Genissa's at. It's like, you understood what this was and why this didn't work and why these systems had to go when the people in those positions were red state people or whatever. But now you don't understand, and these systems are actually good, and we need to work with them and together and blah, blah, blah,
You're just
blah.
like, I just want you to quickly make that make sense, just ever so briefly.
Yeah. And like also the fact that they are paying you, I'm sure that plays no part
At all.
It's really sad, because I think it goes back to the whole theme here, right? Is hope versus despair, right? It's nihilism versus hope. And you can despair a little bit and still have hope. Like, God knows I am so sad right now. I do not have a lot of hope that the next basically decade is going to be really, really rough. It's going to be really fucking rough. But I do have hope that enough people will come together to mitigate some of it or to figure it out in some ways. But I'm very realistic in that a lot of people aren't going to survive this. And I also think that's also part of this, right? That's part of what we're wrestling with this season. Is that's a really hard place to look around and be like, this was so preventable. This was all so goddamn preventable. And yes, there's part of me that's like, y'all wanted to fuck around and find out. You wanted to do a round 2 electric boogaloo. You didn't want to listen to nobody. Y'all wanted to play this game again? Really? But then at the same time, there's the part of me that's a little more healed. That's like, okay, well, get the crew back together. Let's get the gloves. Let's get down to work, because we're doing it again. And it doesn't matter how fucking angry I am at this country at large. Like, propaganda is real. And at some point, like, you have to decide whether your anger is worth burning it all down with no plan.
The way that people will, in their very best clothes, with all the bells and the whistles, like new silk press, freshly done nails, will absolutely like speed off to do the work of like colonizers and oppressors and supremacy in general with no assistance, and will just look at people in situations and be like, if I saw another person do what I'm doing right now, I would be like, I would recognize that is actually awful and terrible and bad and shouldn't be done. But also this person lives in Kansas, so I feel justified for saying this. And you're just like, what?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, what part of when we said everybody, we meant everybody. What part of that what like isn't clicking for you?
It's like that old, like imagery, like, you're like, it's like all these people in a boat, and it's like, well, I don't care if there's a hole in their side of the boat because my side of the boat doesn't have a hole in it. It's like, but baby, it's the same boat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's the same boat. And if you don't help them bail water and fill holes, y'all all finna drown. And it's like, again, it's being able to hold that nuance of like, I do not fuck with that person. Like, if you are any type of Republican, right, moderate, anything, of that nature, I don't fuck with you. I don't want to invite you over to my house. I don't want to be friends. I have nothing to say to you. And at the same time, I can recognize that anything that happens to you is going to happen to me worse because we live in the same country. And sociologically, where you are positioned, maybe you have greater power, greater access than I have. So if you're fucked, I'm extra fucked. And I can decide that when I see somebody trying to fuck you, I'm going to intercede. Not necessarily because we're besties, but because I understand our connectedness within this system. And I can't just sit back and be like, ha ha ha, it's fun to watch you suffer, and forget that either it's already happening to me and I am not even noticing because I'm so focused on laughing at you, or they're just practicing so that they can refine their technique for me, right? And again, that's the part, going back to that idea of like, how do you separate the accountability from the petty bitterness, right? So that you can actually do something that isn't just, you're just kicking the can of the violence or the consequences or the whatever down the line, thinking that you're going to just hold it off long enough or whatever, it's not going to come to you, right? Like, yes, does it feel a little good when bad people have bad things happen to them? Of course. But when it comes to systemic harm, no one is safe from that, right? So you have to be able to separate that part of you, right? That is like, it's delicious to watch you cry, from the reality that like we are literally all in this boat together and the water is rising.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? There's a difference between your personal bully tripping and falling flat on their face and you getting a little chuckle snort because like, haha, you fucked with me, and it's nice. It's nice to see something happen. It fulfills my sense of cosmic justice. There's a difference between that and, haha, millions of people you don't fucking know are getting routed up and you're gonna chuckle snort because you don't feel like they did enough for you. It's not transactional. And that's really hard because it sucks to have to help people who suck. But guess what? We all collectively have to mature emotionally. We have to grow the fuck up fast if we're gonna do this, because it is, again, not okay to collectively punish people. And also, if we're gonna stop fucking with this carceral shit, stop fucking with the carceral shit. Punishment is not accountability. So we are about, I believe we are about at time. So the next time you hear us lovely folks, we'll be playing a game. I mean, depending on when all this comes out, who knows? You may not hear this till after we've played the game, in which case, hey, this is what we were thinking before we played the game. I don't know. But let's do little outros here.
It's been real, y'all. My name is Blue. You can find me on, in the internet streets as King V_, and as King with a Y. And this has been real. I really enjoyed the conversations we had today, and I feel good like exiting this and not so alone and like in the world and how we feel about the current going ons as I was feeling like yesterday and today. So thanks for that, y'all.
Sin?
Right. So hi, I've been Synxiec, and next week or next recording, one of those two things, time is a soup and it's not real. I will be Romero Marcus on their new journey to Target, I suppose, as a Target. And this talk has been really good. I'm glad to be here and to be in community with all of you. So
Mutual. Emrys.
Hey, y'all. This is Emrys. You can find me on the internet at Dragon Emrys on basically all of the websites. I am also really looking forward to playing my first human character with no supernatural abilities. Let's see if I survive.
Nice. All right, y'all. And this is Cassie, they, them pronouns. I've been your storyteller, your moderator, your facilitator of this shindig, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, we'll see y'all. I guess you'll hear us soon. We probably won't see you. I don't know. We'll see. But until next time, please take care of each other. Love yourself. Stand together. We get through this together or not at all. And yeah, don't talk to the feds. Lawyer. It's your favorite word. It's your favorite word. Lawyer. Lawyer is your favorite word. And with that, we'll see y'all next time. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.